Hi there. We are on day 186 of Through the Bible in 1 Year. It's the 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. Remember, we run things, not them. So, today we're doing 2 Kings 12 and 13, and also 2 Chronicles 24. Realize that Kings and Chronicles tell basically the same story right after one another. So, and he never read it in chronological order like this, in which its stories and events occurred, it says at the top. So let's get into this. We'll tell the same story twice, and you should know it well after this, right? In the 7th year of Jehu, Joash became king and reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah, who was from Beersheba. Throughout the time, Jehoiada, the priest, instructed him. Joash did what was right in the Lord's sight, yet the high places were not taken away. The people continued sacrificing and burning incense on the high places. Then Joash said to the priest, "All the dedicated money brought to the Lord's temple, census money, money from the vows, and all the money voluntarily given for the Lord's temple, each priest is to take from his assessor and repair whatever damage to the temple is found." About time, huh? Remember, the king of Egypt won and looted and took everything. By the 23rd year of the reign of King Joash, the priests had not repaired the damage to the temple. So King Joash called Jehoiada the priest and the other priests and said, "Why haven't you repaired the temple's damage? Since you haven't, don't take any money from your assessors. Instead, hand it over for the repair of the temple." So the priests agreed they would not take money from the people, and they would not repair the temple's damage. What? And they would not. Why haven't you repaired the damage? Since you haven't, don't take money from your assessors. Instead, hand it over for the repair of the temple. So the priests agreed they would not take money from the people, and they would not repair the temple's damage. How weird, huh? Then Jehoiada the priest took a chest, bored a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar on the right side as one enters the Lord's temple. In it, the priests who guarded the threshold put all the money brought into the Lord's temple. Whenever they saw there was a large amount of money in the chest, the king's secretary and the high priest would go to the Lord's temple and count the money found there, tie it up in bags. Then they would put the kind of money into the hands of those doing the work, those who oversaw the Lord's temple. They, in turn, would pay it out to those working on the Lord's temple, the carpenters, the builders, the masons, the stonecutters, and would use it to buy timber and quarried stone to repair the damage to the Lord's temple for all the spending for temple repairs. However, no silver bowls, wick trimmers, spending basins, trumpets, or any articles of gold or silver were made for the Lord's temple from the money brought to the temple. Instead, it was given to those doing the work, and they repaired the Lord's temple with it. No accounting was required from the men who received the money to pay those doing the work, since they worked with integrity. How do you like that? The money from the restitution offering and the sin offering was not brought to the Lord's temple, since it belonged to the priests. Armenian invasion of Judah. At that time, Hazael, king of Aram, marched up and fought against Gath and captured it. Then he planned to attack Jerusalem. So King Joash of Judah took all the consecrated items that his ancestors, Judah's king Jehoshaphat, Joram, and Isaiah, had consecrated, along with his own consecrated items, and all the gold found in the treasures of the Lord's temple and the king's palace, and sent them to Hazael, king of Aram. Then Hazael withdrew from Jerusalem. Instead of fighting, just take everything I have. Joash assassinated. The rest of the events of Joash's reign, along with all the accomplishments, are written in the historical records of Judah's kings. Joash's servants conspired against him and killed him at Beth Millo, on the road that goes down to Sela. His servants Jozabed, son of Simeath, and Jehoshaphat, son of Shah, struck him down, and he died. Then they buried him with his fathers in the city of David, and his son Amaziah became king in his place. Israel's king Jehoahaz. In the 23rd year of Judah, King Josh, son of Ahaziah, Jehoahaz of Jehu, became king over Israel and Samaria and reigned 17 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight and followed the sins of Jeroboam and the Nebat and caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from them, so the Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he surrendered them to the power of Hazael, king of Aram, and his son Behadad during their reigns. think they would learn, huh? You'd think they would learn. Then Jehoahaz sought the Lord's favor, and the Lord heard him. For he saw the oppression the king Aram inflicted on Israel. Therefore the Lord gave Israel a deliverer, and they escaped from the power of the Arameans. Then the people of Israel dwelt in their tents as before, but they didn't turn away from the sins that the house of Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit. Jehoahaz walked in them, and the Asherah pole also remained standing in Samaria. Jehoahaz did not have an army left except 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers, because the king Aram had destroyed them, making them like dust at threshing. Wow. The rest of the events Joash done and all his accomplishments and his might are written in historical record of Israel's king. Joash rested with his fathers and was buried in Samaria. His son, another person, became king in his place. Israel's king Jehoash. What's wrong with Bob and Bill and Mark? In the 37th year of Judah's king Jehoash, man, those are became king over Israel in Samaria and reigned 16 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, did not turn away from all the sins of Jeroboam and Nebat and caused Israel to commit, but he walked in them. The rest of the events of Joash's reign, along with all his accomplishments and the power he had to wage war against Judah's king Amaziah, are written in the historical record of Israel's king. Jehoash rested with his fathers, and Jeroboam sat on his throne. Jehoash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. Elisha's death. That's too bad. When Elisha became sick with the illness that he died from, Jehoash, king of Israel, went down and wept over him and said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. Elisha responded, take a bow and arrows. So he got a bow and arrows. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, put your hand on the bow. So the king put his hand on it. And Elisha put his hands on the king's hand, and he said, open the east window. So he opened it. Elisha said, shoot. So he shot. And Elisha said, the Lord's arrow of victory, yes, the arrow of victory over Aram. You are to strike down the Arameans in Aphek until you have put an end to them. Then Elisha said, take the arrows. So he took them. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. So he struck the ground 3 times and stopped. The man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck down Aram until you had put an end to them, but now you will only strike down Aram 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. Now Moabite raiders used to come into the land in the spring of the year. Once as the Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a raiding party, so they threw the man into Elisha's tomb. When he touched Elisha's bones, the man revived and stood up. Wow. Hazael, king of Aram, oppressed Israel throughout the reign of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious to them, had compassion on them, and turned toward them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was not willing to destroy them. Even now he has not banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became king in his place. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, man alive, took back from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the cities of Hazael had taken in war from Jehoahaz's father Jehoahaz. Look how familiar those are. Wow. Defeated Ben-Hadad 3 times and recovered the city of Israel. Okay. Now let's read the whole thing all over again, shall we? Judah's king Joash. And I got to say these names again, don't I? Joash was 7 years old when he became king and reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba. Throughout the time of Joah, the priest Joash did what was right in the Lord's sight. Jehoiada acquired 2 wives for him, and he was the father of sons and daughters. Remember that? That was yesterday. This camera freezes up sometimes. After Joash took it to heart to renovate the Lord's temple, so he gathered the priests and Levites and said, go out to the cities of Judah and collect all the money for Israel to repair the temple of your God as needed year by year, and do it quickly. However, the Levites did not hurry, so the king called Jehoiada, the high priest, and said, why haven't you required the Levites to bring to Judah and Jerusalem the tax imposed by the Lord's servant Moses and assembly to Israel for the tent of the assembly? For the sons who were wicked at Athaliah broke into the Lord's temple and even used the sacred things of the Lord's temple for Baals. Ooh, bad news. At the king's command, a chest was made and placed outside the gate of the Lord's temple. Then a proclamation was issued in Judah and Jerusalem that the tax God servants Moses imposed on Israel in the wilderness be brought to the Lord. All the leaders and all the people rejoiced, brought the tax, and put it in the chest until it was full. Whenever the chest was brought by the Levites to the king's overseers, and when they saw it, there was a large amount of money, the king's secretary and high priest deputy came, emptied the chest, picked it up, and returned it to its place. They did this daily and gathered the money in abundance. Then the king Jehoiada gave it to those in charge of labor on the Lord's temple, who were hiring stone cutters and carpenters to renovate the Lord's temple, also blacksmiths and coppersmiths to repair the Lord's temple. The workmen did their work, and through them the repairs progressed. They restored God's temple to its specifications and reinforced it. When they finished, they presented the rest of the money to the king Jehoiada, who made articles for the Lord's temple with it. Now, see, the other one said they didn't. Articles for ministry and for making burnt offerings and ladles, and articles of gold and silver. They regularly offered burnt offerings to the Lord's temple throughout Jehoiada's life. Joash's apostasy. Jehoiada died when he was old and full of days. He was 130 years old at his death. Priest for a long time. He was buried in the city of David with the kings because he had done what was good in Israel with respect to God and his temple. However, after Jehoiada died, the rulers of Judah came and paid homage to the king. Then the king listened to them, and they abandoned the temple of Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, and served the Asherah poles and the idols. So there was wrath against Judah and Jerusalem from this guilt of theirs. Nevertheless, he sent them prophets to bring them back to the Lord. They admonished them, but the people would not listen. The Spirit of God took control of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, the priest. You've heard of Zechariah, haven't you? He stood above the people and said to them, "This is what God says. Why are you transgressing the Lord's commands, and you do not prosper? Because you have abandoned the Lord, he has abandoned you." But they conspired against him and stoned him in the king's command in the courtyard in the Lord's temple. Wow. King Joash didn't remember the kindness that Zechariah's father Jehoiada had extended to him, but killed his son. While he was dying, he said, "May the Lord see and demand an account." After the turn of the year, the Aramean army went to war against Joash. They entered Judah and Jerusalem and destroyed all the leaders of the people among them and sent all the plunder to the king of Damascus. Although the Aramean army came with only a few men, the Lord handed over a vast army to them because the people of Judah had abandoned Yahweh. You think they would learn, huh? Then the God of their ancestors, so they executed judgment on Joash. Joash assassinated. We read this already. When the Arameans saw that Joash had many wounds, they left him. His servants conspired against him and killed him on his bed because he had shed the blood of the sons of Jehoiada the priest. So he died, and they buried him in the city of David, but they did not bury him in the tombs of the kings. Those who conspired against him were Zabad, son of son of this one. Right. Did you get all that? Concerning his sons, the many oracles about him and the restoration of the Lord's temple, they are recorded in the writing of the book of Kings. His son Amaziah became king in his place. So, there you have it. More kings and kings and kings and queens and stuff, right? What are we doing tomorrow? Ooh, 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles. Hey, the story continues. And we'll be rid of all these kings at some point, and we'll get to, well, I guess I didn't realize there were so many different kings. I mean, we've got hundreds of them, right? And they're all recorded in the books that we no longer have access to. So, but there you have it. That's day 186. Didn't take too long. Just reading through. We want to read through the whole Bible so you can say you read through it. It's not. We're not actually studying all these. We're just reading it. Okay. And when you study a Bible, you take one book and you take that book as a whole, and you dissect it, and you learn from it, and you get wisdom and knowledge and understanding from the books. We're just reading through it, so we're familiar with the story. So when you do go back and study these books, you can say, "Oh yeah, I'm familiar with this story." Right? So, and it helps to have the whole Bible read, so then somebody can say, "Well, the Bible says this and this and this," and you can I don't remember it saying that. Perhaps you could point that verse out to me. Right? So, there you go. Or might start another study later. I don't know if today or tomorrow, but I'm trying to study Paul's letters specifically written to the Gentiles, which is to us. Okay? Because we need to hear it, basically. So stay tuned for that. But the next time, give us a like if you think about it. Catch up on an email missed. You want to say you got the whole Bible. No, but until next time, we'll do it again. See you later. Have a good 4th of July.